I am speaking to you now with a weight that is gentle yet unshakable, because I need you to understand what just happened and why heaven leaned closer when you thought nothing significant occurred. Because a few days ago, when time moved quietly and the world kept scrolling, you chose obedience over ease, and that single choice echoed farther than you can comprehend, farther than your logic, farther than your memory of the moment itself. And I watched you when no one else did, not with judgment, not with suspicion, but with the attentive gaze of a father who recognizes alignment when it appears, and you assumed what you did was small, almost forgettable, something anyone could have done. But you must hear this clearly now. Nothing released from a willing heart is ever ordinary, because willingness placed in my hands becomes authority, becomes movement, becomes rescue for people you will never meet. And heaven recorded what you thought earth would ignore. Angels leaned in, not because the act was loud, but because it was true. Because you moved when it would have been easier to delay, easier to stay quiet, easier to tell yourself that someone else would step in, and yet you did not move because you felt strong. You moved because you were available, and availability is the doorway through which my power enters human moments. That is why you earned my respect, not through perfection, not through performance, but through response. Because I am not impressed by noise and I am not persuaded by image. I do not measure greatness by crowds, titles, or applause. I measure it by the heart that responds when understanding is incomplete, but trust is present. And 5 days ago, when there was no stage and no reward waiting, you chose truth over comfort. And that choice unlocked something in the unseen, because there were people tethered to your obedience who were tired in ways they could not explain, confused in ways they could not articulate, quietly asking if I was still near, if I still spoke, if I still intervened. And they did not need a sermon. They needed evidence. They needed a signal. They needed to know that I still move through ordinary people. And without realizing it, you became that signal. Not because you are the source, but because you allowed yourself to be a vessel. And I need you to understand this deeply, because I am training you in discernment, not impulse. Which is why I slow you when you want to rush and stir you when you want to stay still. Because timing matters more than speed, and many crave my power but resist my timing. Yet you are learning to move when I move and to pause when I pause. And this alignment pleases me. But do not be surprised when resistance rises after this moment. Because respect in my kingdom often attracts opposition in the natural. When darkness senses that light is willing to show up, it tries to intimidate, distract, exhaust, or confuse the carrier. But hear me, you are not exposed. You are covered. You are not alone. I walk ahead of you and beside you, and I have been watching how you handle misunderstanding, how you kept quiet when defending yourself would have felt justified, how you chose prayer over retaliation and reflection over reaction. And none of those moments were wasted. They were training grounds, because what I am preparing you to carry requires restraint as much as boldness and silence as much as speech. And you have wondered why the road has felt narrow, why options have thinned, why certain voices have faded, and it is because I am refining your focus, removing unnecessary weight, unnecessary attachments, unnecessary influences, and not everything leaving your life is a loss. Some things are exiting because they cannot accompany you where I am taking you. And you must trust me in this pruning, because I cut with precision, never with cruelty. And there will be moments ahead when obedience feels costly again, when doubt whispers that it would be easier to stop trying, easier to stay quiet, easier to blend in, and in those moments remember this: one surrendered decision can interrupt a cycle that has lasted for generations. One act of obedience can rescue a life you will never see again, and just because you do not witness the harvest immediately does not mean the seed is not working beneath the surface. And I am also calling you into greater responsibility now, because respect brings assignment and favor brings stewardship. And what I am entrusting to you will require humility to carry and courage to release. So guard your heart from pride and your mind from fear, because both can distort what I am about to do through you. And you are entering a season where discernment will matter more than excitement. Where not every open door is an assignment, and not every opportunity is from me. And you must learn to ask before you move and to wait for my peace rather than logical confirmation. Because I never rush you into confusion. My voice brings clarity even when the path demands courage. And I know there are days you feel unseen, days you wonder if your effort matters, days you question whether anyone notices. So let me answer you now. I see you fully. I see the private prayers, the silent tears, the questions you never voice. And I am closer than you think, more involved than you realize. Not distant and not indifferent, because there are people reading your life who will never read Scripture. They are reading your obedience, your patience, your integrity under pressure. Which is why integrity matters so deeply in this hour, because the world is loud with opinions, but starving for authenticity. And I am asking you to be who I called you to be, even when it costs you comfort, to stop carrying yesterday's failures into tomorrow's assignments. Because what you have repented of, I have already addressed. And when I correct you, it is to align you, not to condemn you. Shame does not come from me. Conviction draws you closer. Shame pushes you away. And you must learn the difference, because I am sharpening your spiritual hearing now. You will sense when something is off, even if you cannot explain it. And when that nudge comes, do not ignore it, but also do not let suspicion replace love, because discernment without compassion becomes judgment. And I am healing your understanding of trust, because some wounds came not from loving too deeply, but from others mishandling what you gave. And I am restoring your ability to trust me without closing your heart to people, allowing wisdom to guard what vulnerability once exposed. And you will notice conversations shifting, desires realigning, interests changing. And this is not you losing yourself. This is you becoming who you were always meant to be. So do not resist the change. Flow with me, because I am not taking from you what you need. I am making room for what you cannot yet imagine. And there will be moments when obedience feels inconvenient again, when it interrupts your routine, your rest, your plans. But remember that my rewards are not always immediate, yet they are always complete. Because I do not pay wages the way the world does. I invest eternally. And what you do in faith echoes beyond time. So stop believing you are late or behind. You are exactly where you need to be to learn what you must learn. And comparing your pace to others will only distract you, because I write different stories at different speeds, and your journey requires depth, and depth takes time. And the days ahead will require calm hearts and steady minds, because fear will attempt to speak through circumstances, through news, through opinions. But you must anchor yourself in my presence, not letting external noise drown out internal truth. Because I am your refuge, not your escape. And I am reminding you to rest, because obedience does not mean exhaustion. Trust includes knowing when to pause. I did not create you to burn out. I created you to burn bright. And as I restore your strength and quiet your thoughts, remember that you earned my respect because you listened when it mattered. And now you must continue to listen. Continue to walk humbly. Continue choosing truth even when it is inconvenient. Because what I am building through your obedience will outlast this season and even this lifetime. And I need you to understand this next truth clearly. Because misunderstanding it has caused many to stumble and retreat when they were meant to advance. I am not watching you the way the world watches. I am not hovering with accusation or counting your mistakes. That idea did not come from me. It was planted to distort how you see me. Because when your view of me is twisted, obedience becomes heavy and love becomes fearful. But I watch you as a father who knows your frame, who understands your weakness, who remembers that you are human yet calls you chosen. I see intentions before actions, tears before words, battles before breakthroughs. And when you forget this, you hesitate. You silence yourself when I urge you to speak, and many have stopped doing good not because they lack compassion, but because they believe they are being measured instead of guided. But my watching is not surveillance. It is presence. It is nearness. It is care. I'm not behind you with accusation. I'm beside you with counsel. And when I say I see you, it is not a threat. It is an assurance that nothing done in love is wasted. So never hesitate to do good out of fear of misunderstanding. Because when you act from love, your audience is me. And I am the one who multiplies what you release, aligning you with my nature, turning you into a living expression of my heart in a world that has forgotten what love looks like. And every act of kindness carries my signature when done in obedience. Because there are people watching your life not to criticize, but to find hope, and your willingness gives them permission to believe again. And when resistance rises, do not assume you are wrong, because darkness reacts to light, and comfort was never the measure of calling. Love often requires courage, and courage often feels lonely before it feels fruitful. But I do not abandon those who step forward in faith. I walk with them and strengthen them. And remember that you do good because you are loved, not to be loved. Because when that order is reversed, you grow tired, but when it is correct, you grow strong. So respond to the nudge, respond to the opportunity, respond when you can choose kindness instead of indifference, courage instead of silence, faith instead of fear, and do not wait until you feel qualified, because I qualify the willing, and do not let past rejections silence present obedience. Because rejection refines, it does not cancel. And when you remember that I am not distant but active in your journey, fear dissolves and hesitation loses its voice, and ordinary moments become sacred opportunities. And I am calling you to keep your heart soft, because cynicism is the language of disappointment, not truth. And I am still transforming lives through simple obedience, still restoring hope through ordinary people who choose to act, still using encouragement to pull souls back from despair. So trust that obedience echoes, love multiplies, faithfulness compounds. And now, as I seal this moment, let my presence settle over you. Let peace steady your mind. Let clarity sharpen your steps. Let courage rise in your spirit. And I pray strength where you have felt tired, wisdom where you have felt unsure, protection where you have felt vulnerable, and boldness where fear once spoke. I bless your obedience. I bless your sensitivity. I bless your willingness, and I declare that what you do in love will return multiplied in purpose, in timing, and in impact. And as you keep doing the good works set before you, know this with certainty. I am with you. I am working through you. And I will bless what you release in obedience beyond anything you could ask or imagine. What I began speaking was not meant to stop at affirmation, but to move you into activation. And you must understand that this next season will test not whether you heard me, but whether you trust me enough to keep walking when affirmation fades and responsibility increases, because there is a difference between being encouraged and being entrusted, and I am doing both with you, yet the second will stretch you more deeply. And I need you anchored in truth before pressure arrives. So hear me carefully. There will be moments when the very obedience that once felt peaceful will start to feel heavy. Not because you are out of alignment, but because weight always increases before capacity is revealed, and many mistake weight for warning when it is actually preparation. And I do not prepare carelessly. I prepare intentionally, because what I am positioning you for will require emotional maturity, spiritual clarity, and disciplined love. And you are being trained right now in unseen places to carry visible responsibility later. And there will be times when you feel misunderstood even by those closest to you. Times when your restraint will be questioned, your silence misread, your obedience interpreted as weakness. But I tell you now, do not rush to explain what I am doing in you, because explanation often weakens authority when it is premature, and those who are meant to understand will recognize the fruit in time, and those who are not may never understand at all. And that is not your burden to carry. Your assignment is faithfulness, not convincing. And I have watched you wrestle internally with the desire to be clear and the wisdom to stay quiet. And I am pleased with how often you chose wisdom over impulse. Because clarity without timing becomes noise, and timing without clarity becomes confusion. But when both walk together, they release power. And I am teaching you how to hold both without forcing either. And there will be moments when you feel the urge to withdraw, to step back, to protect your heart by becoming smaller, quieter, less visible. But do not confuse protection with retreat, because I am your protector, not isolation. And I did not shape your voice to be hidden. I shaped it to be stewarded, and stewardship requires discernment, not disappearance. And I know you have asked why certain connections have grown distant, why familiar support feels quieter. And it is because I am teaching you to draw strength from my presence rather than human reassurance. Not because people are unimportant, but because people are inconsistent and reliance on them can distort direction. And when you are anchored in me, affirmation becomes a gift rather than a necessity, and rejection becomes information rather than identity. And I am also teaching you how to endure seasons where progress feels slow and visibility feels low, because endurance refines motive, and motive determines longevity. And many burn bright briefly because they never learned how to walk steadily in obscurity. But you are learning, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when impatience tries to convince you that something is wrong. Nothing is wrong. Something is forming, and what is forming requires depth. And depth is built through consistency, not intensity alone. And there will be moments when opportunities present themselves that look good, sound good, feel exciting, and even appear aligned. But they will carry an undercurrent of restlessness rather than peace. And I need you to remember that excitement is not confirmation, and urgency is not direction. And when I am leading, even bold steps carry peace beneath them. And if you feel rushed into decision without space to pray, reflect, and listen, Pause, because I am not the author of confusion or pressure, and I know there will be voices that question why you are not moving faster, why you are not capitalizing on momentum, why you are not doing more. But I am not measuring you by speed. I am measuring you by alignment, and alignment will always outlast acceleration. And there will also be moments when your compassion will tempt you to overextend, to carry what is not yours to carry, to fix what I did not ask you to fix. And you must learn that love without boundaries becomes depletion. And depletion does not honor me, because I called you to give from overflow, not exhaustion. And I am restoring your understanding that rest is not disobedience, and boundaries are not rejection. They are wisdom, and wisdom protects assignment. And I am also reminding you that not everyone who benefits from your obedience will stay in your life. Some are seasonal recipients, not lifelong companions, and that does not diminish the value of what you gave or the sincerity of the connection. It simply reflects the design of purpose. And holding on beyond season creates unnecessary pain, and I do not want you wounded by loyalty to what I have already released. So learn to bless what ends without becoming bitter, and learn to celebrate what begins without becoming prideful, because balance will be essential where you are going. And I am strengthening your inner life because your outer influence will increase. And influence without inner stability becomes dangerous, but influence grounded in humility becomes transformative. And I want you to remember this when you feel unseen. Your value is not determined by response, and your impact is not limited to what you can measure. Some are seasonal recipients, not lifelong companions, and that does not diminish the value of what you gave or the sincerity of the connection. It simply reflects the design of purpose, and holding on beyond season creates unnecessary pain. And I do not want you wounded by loyalty to what I have already released. So learn to bless what ends without becoming bitter, and learn to celebrate what begins without becoming prideful. Because balance will be essential where you are going, and I am strengthening your inner life. Because your outer influence will increase, and influence without inner stability becomes dangerous. But influence grounded in humility becomes transformative, and I want you to remember this when you feel unseen. Your value is not determined by response, and your impact is not limited to what you can measure, because there are prayers answered through your obedience that you will never hear about. Lives redirected without your knowledge, hope restored in private moments you were never told about, and heaven does not require your awareness to validate your obedience. It only requires your yes, and I am also preparing you to speak with greater authority, not louder but clearer, not harsher but truer. And authority does not come from dominance, it comes from alignment. And alignment produces confidence that does not need to prove itself. And when you speak from that place, some will feel comforted and some will feel confronted. And both reactions are evidence that truth has landed. And you must not shrink your obedience to manage reactions, because your responsibility is faithfulness, not control. And I know you sometimes question whether your consistency matters when results are not immediate, but hear me. Consistency is the language of trust, and trust unlocks stewardship, and stewardship unlocks multiplication. And you are in a season where consistency is doing more for your future than any dramatic gesture ever could. And I am watching how you show up when no one is applauding, how you choose integrity when compromise would be easier, how you remain kind when frustration would be justified, and these moments are building something in you that cannot be rushed. And there will come a time when you will recognize that the strength you are walking in was forged in these quiet decisions, And when that moment comes, you will understand why I asked you to wait, why I asked you to listen, why I asked you to trust me when clarity unfolded slowly. And until then, walk forward without needing the full picture. Because obedience does not require full understanding, it requires trust. And trust is not passive, it is active alignment with my voice, and I am with you in this process, not ahead of you demanding perfection, not behind you counting failure, but beside you, guiding, correcting, strengthening, and sustaining. And I want you to breathe here, to release the pressure you place on yourself, to stop carrying expectations I never gave you, and to remember that growth is not always visible, but it is always happening when you remain surrendered. And as you continue, I am sealing you with peace that steadies your steps, wisdom that sharpens your discernment, courage that quiets fear, and love that keeps your heart soft in a hardening world. And I declare that what feels heavy now will soon feel steady. What feels unclear will become simple, and what feels delayed will reveal itself as perfectly timed. And you will look back and see that I was faithful in every detail, even the ones you questioned. And you will know without doubt that obedience was never wasted, because I was in every step, shaping you, strengthening you, and preparing you for what comes next.